The story will be told from the perspective of the main female character.
My sister didn't even raise her voice when she told me I wasn't allowed to go to the Bahamas for the Christmas holidays. My mom wouldn't even look in my direction. My dad just kept his eyes on his cell phone to ignore me, and my brother-in-law, Tyler, had this little smirk like he'd been waiting for this exact second for years. But I didn't break down. I felt something inside me get very tight and cold, but I stayed calm. It wasn't the kind of feeling that makes you scream. It was the kind that starts making a plan. They thought they had me trapped at that table, but they had no clue that everything changed at that moment. If they knew what I was about to do, they probably would have left the room first. My name is Riley, and if you had met my family years ago, you would have thought we were the sweetest people ever. We were the kind of family that baked treats together on Sundays and left long, nice messages for each other's birthdays. That version of us really happened. I'm not just making it up. I can still remember my older sister, Jessica, grabbing my hand every single time we had to cross a busy street. It was like she was terrified the world would take me away if she let go of my hand. I remember us staying up late in the kitchen at midnight, stealing cookies we weren't supposed to have, and laughing so hard we had to cover our mouths with our shirts so we wouldn't get caught. She used to tell me she'd always protect me, and back then I believed her completely. But everything started to change once Tyler came into her life. My brother-in-law showed up with a lot of ego, loud opinions, and a smile that always felt totally fake. My sister really loved how he acted. Slowly I started to see that every bit of attention she gave to him was something she took away from me. It didn't happen all at once, it was a slow process. Our phone calls got shorter, her visits to see me ended earlier, and they started having inside jokes that I wasn't part of. The family developed a new way of doing things where I was always a step behind, almost like someone had turned down the volume on my entire life. In the beginning, I made excuses for it. I figured my sister was just busy building her own life. I thought that people just grow up and change their priorities. I didn't want to seem like I was being needy or causing a scene. So I kept being nice and even helped them out when they needed money for a payment. I'd pick up the phone late at night when my brother-in-law needed a favor, and I tried to be understanding about everything. I thought that's what you're supposed to do for people you love. I thought you were supposed to be nice even when they weren't. But the distance between us turned into something much worse. At family dinners, my mom would call my sister the responsible one right in front of me. My dad would just ignore my suggestions because my sister had already handled things. On holidays, I would show up and realize the rest of the family had already been there for an hour. These were small things, sure, but they started to add up. They were telling a story that I wasn't ready to face yet. Looking back, all the signs were there long before the Bahamas trip was ever mentioned. There was a weird vibe in the room whenever I walked in. Tyler would smirk any time the conversation wasn't about him. My sister would hide her phone under a napkin when I came near her, like I was bothering them. They even made a new group chat without me, like I was a file that was too old to move to a new computer. I tried to talk about it once in a nice way, but my sister just laughed it off. She told me I was just overthinking things again. Maybe she really thought that, or maybe she just needed me to believe it. But sitting at that table the night she told me I wasn't going to the Bahamas, I realized the truth very clearly. This wasn't just a mistake or us drifting apart. They were pushing me out on purpose, and I wasn't just imagining it. I used to tell myself that families don't just decide to cut someone out. I thought it had to be a misunderstanding or someone not communicating right. I figured if I was patient enough, I could fix it. But the winter before that trip to the Bahamas proved me wrong in a way that I still feel in my bones. It was at my mom and dad's house during one of those holiday parties where the air smells like old furniture and cinnamon. I had walked away to find an extra blanket for myself, walking down the hallway where the only light came from the living room. That was when I heard my sister talking through a door that was halfway closed. Her voice sounded thin and very cold. "She's a total liability," she whispered. I stopped moving. My brother-in-law, Tyler, whispered back to her, "She's so clingy. Honestly, I think she just wants us to feel guilty for taking trips without her. She's just jealous." Then my sister let out a short, mean laugh. "She can't even keep her own life together. I'm tired of having to help her up all the time." There was a little pause. "She doesn't need to come to the Bahamas. She'll just ruin the whole thing." I can still feel how hard I squeezed that blanket I never actually picked up. There is a specific kind of quiet that makes it hard to breathe, not because it's loud, but because you suddenly realize you're the person everyone is making fun of in a conversation you weren't supposed to hear. I didn't walk into the room. I didn't yell at them. I just walked back into the hallway, let the noise of the house hide me, and kept that silence with me like a sharp object I couldn't put down. After that night, the signs didn't just show up more, they were everywhere. They started group chats without me. My invitations to things got lost. When my sister gave me updates about what the family was doing, it was always very vague, like she was talking to a coworker she didn't even like. When she did call me, it was always because she needed something. A ride somewhere, some money moved around, or a lie to cover for her. My name only came up when it was helpful for her. And Tyler was even worse in that quiet way that only arrogant people can manage. He'd raise an eyebrow if I showed up too early. He'd smirk when I offered to help and say, "We've already got it covered." He would even try to correct me on things he didn't even know anything about just to make sure I knew where he thought I belonged. I learned how to read the mood around him like it was the weather. If he was smiling, it usually meant someone else was about to have a bad day. But the big moment wasn't the hallway or the whispering. It happened a few weeks later when I got an email. My phone buzzed while I was cleaning my place. The name on the email was my mom's, but the message wasn't supposed to be sent to me. It had an attachment for a rental contract for a house on the beach in the Bahamas. There was also a note written to my sister. "Don't tell her. She'll just make everything dramatic. We don't need her bad energy ruining the trip." I looked at that screen for a really long time. It wasn't because I didn't get it. It was because I finally, painfully understood everything. All the small insults being left out, the quiet lies, they weren't just because people were busy. It was a plan, a team effort. And I had been letting it happen because I loved them, or because I was loyal, or because I didn't want to be the one who made things dramatic. But the truth hit me perfectly. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being erased. And once you realize that, you don't ask for a seat at the table anymore. You take your power back. I didn't say anything the night my sister told me I wasn't going to the Bahamas like it was a prize I hadn't won. I didn't cry. I didn't try to get them to understand my side. I didn't ask what I did wrong. I just sat there and let that tight feeling grow in my chest like a storm coming from far away. It was quiet and heavy. People think being mad is loud. My anger wasn't. My anger was a door closing. When I drove back to my place that night, the city sky looked very sharp, like winter was starting early. I went into my apartment, hung up my coat, and for the first time in a long time I didn't make up reasons to forgive them. Instead, I started looking for the truth. Real, physical proof that nobody could argue with. I started by pulling away. It wasn't a big scene, I just did it very carefully. When my sister texted me asking if I could give her $420 because Tyler was between paychecks, I just replied with a simple "I can't." I didn't give any excuses and I didn't try to make her feel better about it. When she called because she needed me to lie for her, I just let the phone ring. When my mom tried to get me to fix an argument they were having, I told her nicely, "I'm not getting involved in that anymore." Every step I took was small and planned out, and it felt surprisingly good. Then there was the house by the lake. My mom and dad's old place outside the city was always the symbol of our family. Summer dinners, bugs biting us, and the sound of laughing over the water. Years ago, they told my sister she could have it after she got married, but they never actually finished the legal paperwork. Back then, I didn't really care about it. But now, with my mom's email still stuck in my head, I started to wonder about things. So I pulled out my own papers, looked through old files and checked what I had against public records. And there it was, very clear. Legally, I was still half owner of the house. They never finished the transfer. That meant every fix-up, every bill and every choice about the house needed my signature too. And that wasn't the only issue. Payments were late. Bills were still sitting there. The fees for maintenance hadn't been paid. And Tyler, who was always so confident, had been renting the house out to people on the side to make extra money. I found that out with one phone call to the county office. The lady on the phone was nice and explained that any rentals needed permission from both owners in writing. I hung up the phone feeling a new kind of calm. This wasn't about getting even yet. This was about taking back what was mine. I made it to my parents' house earlier than everyone else on purpose. I wasn't there to help cook or to try and make things better like I used to do. I just wanted to get a feel for the room before the rest of the family showed up. The dining table was already prepared. The silverware was lined up in perfect rows. The holiday napkins were folded into those little triangles my sister always demanded because she thought it made the house look more expensive. I ran my finger along the edge of one and wondered how many years I had mistaken her acting for actual family closeness. By the time the rest of them walked in, the air in the room felt heavy. It was that fake kind of politeness people use when there is something dangerous hiding under the surface. My sister came in first, wearing a champagne-coloured dress and a look of confidence that seemed way too big for her. Her husband followed her, moving his shoulders around like he already owned the place. My mom came in behind them, looking stressed out and moving a tray of bread around over and over because she didn't know where to put her eyes. My dad just sat in his usual chair at the top of the table and pulled out his phone before he even said hello to me. It was the same old story with the same people, but I wasn't the same person anymore. We spent about 15 minutes making small talk that felt like chewing on a piece of cardboard. We talked about the weather and work, and my brother-in-law started bragging about things that nobody asked to hear. My sister smiled at every single word he said, the way people do when they are just pretending to be in love instead of actually feeling it. Then my mom brought up the trip to the Bahamas. Her voice was light, but I could tell she was shaking a little bit. She said the flights were all ready for next week and that the rental house on the water looked beautiful. My sister jumped in, not even looking at me, and said they got really lucky with the place. I watched her husband lean back in his chair like he was waiting for a show to start. I watched my dad look at his phone again so he wouldn't have to see my face. And then, exactly like I expected, my sister said it again. It was the same sentence that had hurt me so much just days before. She told me that I wasn't coming to the Bahamas for Christmas and that the decision was already made. The whole room went dead silent. It was the kind of silence that feels like it has actual weight. My mom started blinking really fast. My dad just kept scrolling through nothing on his screen. My sister's husband had that smirk on his face, the look of a man who thinks he knows exactly how someone is going to fall apart. But I didn't fall apart. I just folded my hands, sat back in my chair, and let the silence last until even my sister started to look uncomfortable. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a single folder. I set it on the table very gently, like I was putting down something made of glass. I looked at my sister and told her that before we talked about the Bahamas, we needed to talk about the house by the lake. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. She asked what I meant by that. I pushed the folder toward her and told her to open it. She didn't want to at first. Her husband leaned forward, his eyebrows bunching up, asking what this was. I told them it was the paperwork, the payments, the bills, the notices from the county, and the ownership records. My mom let out a quiet gasp. My dad actually put his phone down for the first time all night. My sister started looking through the papers. Her face didn't change right away, but her husband's did. I saw a little twitch in his jaw. He was starting to realize things were going wrong. My sister finally looked up, her voice sounding very thin, and asked if I was really still on the deed. I told her yes. I explained that the transfer was never actually finished. Legally, I still owned half of that house, which meant every choice, every fix-up, and every rental had to go through me. My sister's husband's head snapped up. I looked right at him and mentioned the rentals. I told him the county office confirmed he had been renting the place out for extra cash under the table, but since I never gave my permission, those rentals weren't legal. My mom pressed her hand against her chest. My dad's face went totally white. My sister tried to say something about the Bahamas trip, but I cut her off. I told her this wasn't about the vacation. I told her it was about years of them making choices behind my back and treating me like I didn't exist unless they needed something from me. I told her I was tired of being erased. My brother-in-law let out a loud, mocking noise. He asked me if I really thought I could just walk into the house and change how things worked. I looked right at him and told him that I wasn't just thinking about it. I had already done it. I pulled out another piece of paper and slid it across the table toward him. I explained that it was a formal notification from the county. Since I never gave permission for the house to be used as a rental, the property was now under a legal review. I told him that until the legal issues were fixed, nobody was allowed to step foot in that house. My sister's face went completely white. She stammered that the lake house was theirs. I told her as calmly as I could that it was promised to her, but the deal was never finished. Legally, the place was still half mine. My brother-in-law's voice started to get loud and angry. He called the whole situation insane. I told him that what was actually insane was expecting me to stay quiet while he made money off a property he didn't even fully own. I told them both that treating me like I was disposable and then acting surprised when I stopped putting up with it was the real crazy part. My mom whispered my name, calling me sweetheart in a shaky voice, but I wasn't looking for her to comfort me anymore. I was looking for the truth to be out in the open. I told them exactly what was going to happen next. I said that my sister and her husband had to get out of the lake house, and it had to happen right away. My sister's eyes got very wide, and I could see the fear in them. It was the look people get when they finally realize they shouldn't have underestimated someone. She asked me if I would really do that to her. I met her gaze and told her that I already did. I explained that the county already had all the paperwork and the review was moving forward. I told her she needed to have all of her things out of the house by the end of the week. A heavy silence hit the room. My mom's eyes filled up with tears and she didn't know what to do or say. My dad just stared at me like he was seeing me as a grown adult for the first time in his life. My brother-in-law just slumped back in his chair. All of his fake confidence and his smirk were totally gone. My sister just shook her head slowly and asked me why I was doing this now. I told her it was because she made a choice to push me out, so now I was making a choice of my own. The air in the room was thick with the consequences of what they had done. I gathered my things, stood up from the table and looked around at all of them. My mom was shaking, my dad was speechless, and my sister looked like she was empty inside. Her husband just looked defeated. I told them they thought I would just give up and fold, but I don't do that. I told them that I planned things out. Then I walked out of the house feeling calm, steady, and completely unshaken. Behind me, nobody even moved. They ended up moving out even faster than I thought they would. In just 4 days, the porch of the lake house was totally bare. All of my sister's fancy decorations and her husband's big outdoor gear were gone. It looked like the place had been swept clean out of fear rather than out of respect. They knew that if they tried to stay, I would find out even more about what they had been hiding. My mom called me twice, her voice sounding very weak and shaky. My dad left a voicemail saying he never truly realized how bad things had gotten between us all. I didn't call them back right away. It wasn't because I was being mean, I just needed to be able to breathe. Sometimes staying quiet isn't a way to punish people, it's just a way to find your own space. The trip to the Bahamas fell apart almost instantly. The flights were cancelled, and all the plans just disappeared. Nobody went on a big holiday, and nobody was posting happy pictures on social media. The vacation that was designed to leave me behind ended up being a trip that nobody took. The next weekend I drove out to the lake house by myself. The winter sun was reflecting off the water, looking pale and steady. For the first time in a lot of years, the house actually felt like it was mine. It didn't feel like I was just a guest or someone they were tolerating. I stood out on the empty porch and let the silence sink in. It wasn't that heavy, bad silence from the dinner table. This was a much nicer kind of quiet. It was the kind of quiet that gives you room to move instead of taking it away. People usually think that getting justice has to involve a lot of noise and screaming, but sometimes justice is just the sound of your own keys turning in a lock that nobody thought you would ever claim. Justice didn't happen because of slamming doors. It happened because I stopped letting my life get smaller for people who treated me like I didn't matter. Standing there, I realized something very simple. Family isn't just about being related by blood. It's about the people who refuse to try and erase you. I'm not angry anymore, and I'm not waiting around for them to apologize, because I know those apologies won't come. I'm building something for myself now that is quieter and much stronger. If you've ever been pushed aside by your own family, you should know you aren't the only one.